Taiwan, I'm Liao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. What to do about China? Both of the major U.S. parties say its rival in Asia needs to be reined in, one of the few things they seem to agree on as the election approaches. I went to Southern California to see how politicians from both sides of the aisle are viewing the China factor. Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. are divided on nearly every issue. From abortion to gun control to economic policy, the two sides rarely see eye to eye. And in the lead up to the 2024 U.S. presidential election, hotly contested between Republican candidate Donald Trump and Democrat Kamala Harris, these differences have been amplified. But there is one area where both parties are starting to share some common ground: the United States' rivalry with China. Both sides seem to agree that China poses significant challenges to not just the U.S., but also the current world order.
Believe it or not, I'm on 5 different committees, everything related to China.
Korean-American Michelle Steele is the U.S. representative for California's 45th Congressional District in Orange County. She's a Republican and a self-professed China hawk. Steele says China poses several threats to the U.S. from global trade.
I'm on actually Ways and Means Committee. We have trade issues. They never really play fair game.
To soft power and espionage.
They are spreading propaganda to our universities and pouring money in. They're stealing our intellectual properties from universities.
There are similar sentiments about China across the political aisle. Taiwanese American Jay Chen also lives in Southern California. He's a naval reservist, co-chair of Taiwanese Americans for Harris, a group supporting the Democratic candidate's campaign, and he ran against Michelle Steele in 2022. And though Chen differs from Steele on nearly every issue, they do agree that China's business practices are a serious challenge for the U.S.
We know that China does not compete fairly against our companies and has expelled a lot of our companies, made it difficult for U.S. companies to operate there, meanwhile engaging in economic espionage.
But with his naval experience, Chen also says that China poses major maritime challenges. Beijing has been asserting its claims to virtually the entire South China Sea, something that's caused clashes with its Southeast Asian neighbors, including close U.S. ally the Philippines.
So much trade flows through the South China Sea, and we've seen China take really aggressive actions, such as building artificial islands on reefs, and have taken provocative actions against some of our allies.
China also claims Taiwan as part of its territory, something the Taiwanese government denies. And because Taiwan insists on its own sovereignty, Beijing regularly threatens to take the country by force.
我们愿以最大诚意、尽最大努力争取和平统一的前景，但绝不承诺放弃使用武力。
China's military recently simulated a blockade around Taiwan, calling attention to a very real threat for Taipei. For decades, the U.S. has supported Taiwan by providing it with the weapons it needs to defend itself. But that support has been expanding. Another way both sides of the aisle are getting tough on China. Last year, Steele and a Democratic colleague introduced a piece of legislation that would authorize the U.S. president to lend or lease weapons to Taiwan. That bill would cut the red tape for getting American munitions in the hands of Taiwanese soldiers.
We always speak up for Taiwan, and we are standing, up to China, make sure that China is not gonna attack Taiwan, because Taiwan is a sovereign country.
Meanwhile, Jay Chen points out that U.S. President Joe Biden has gone even further than past leaders in expressing support for Taipei.
President Biden even said if Taiwan were to be attacked, that the U.S. would support Taiwan militarily, and that broke a lot of precedent.
But though Democrats and Republicans agree that more needs to be done about China, they differ on how to approach relations with China and on who is best fit for the job. Steele says Republicans are tough and can get the job done.
We understand how that China is spreading all over the world and they're the biggest threats.
But Chen says that ties with China require more finesse so that the U.S. does not end up harming its own Chinese American population.
We understand that China is an adversary, but we are not trying to scapegoat anyone who's of Chinese descent. And as someone who is Taiwanese American, I think that is really, really important.
As Election Day draws nearer, one thing seems certain. The U.S. will be looking to toughen up on China, no matter who is voted in as the country's next president. Devin Tsai, Jeremy Olivier, and Leslie Liao in California for TaiwanPlus.
South Korea's government is taking action to curb over-tourism at a popular tourist spot in Seoul. The plan to introduce a visitor's curfew is aimed at protecting the quality of life for residents, Wesley Lewis reports.
A constant stream of foot traffic fills the narrow, winding roads and alleyways of the Bukchon Hanok village in Seoul. In recent years, the area known for its traditional Korean houses has seen an influx of tourists, creating stress for its residents. Now the government has proposed a trial curfew to begin in November. Good news for tired locals, but business owners in the area who rely on the tourists are worried.
누가 한국에 오고 싶겠어요. 또 한국에 대한 감정이 나쁘면 한국 물품도 안 좋아하거든요.
The curfew will block tourists from entering certain parts of the village between 5 p.m. and 10 a.m., with violators facing fines of up to around $70. Visitor numbers here have ballooned over the past decade. Around 6 million people visited Bukchon last year, overwhelming the small village of around 6,000 residents. Locals say loud noises, littering, and privacy violations have become a daily annoyance.
많은 사람들이 와서 그 앞에 문고리를 잡고 대문을 밀고 들어오려고 한다거나 창 아래에서 막 이렇게 여러 가지 소음을 일으키면서 사진을 찍거나 여러 가지 일을 하거나 이제 이런 거를 겪게 되니까 이제 그게 좀 힘든 거죠.
The mayor of Seoul's Jongno district, where the village is located, says the curfew policy is not set in stone, and that his office will do what it can to meet the needs of the community.
관광객들이 어느 정도 와도 이게 균형을 잡으면서 이제 정주권자들이 크게 불편이 없으시면 되는 거니까 주민들이라 그러니까 이제 실행을 해 나가면서 점점 좀 보완할 건 보완해 나가고 그러면서 좀 이제 지켜보면서 처음 시작하는 거니만큼.
Signs in multiple languages have been set up around the village, imploring tourists to be more mindful. Tourists are divided over the curfew and fines. Some disagree that they should be fined for simply walking down a public road, while others agree with the idea behind the policy.
Yeah, totally agree with that, where if the tourists are being rude and disrespectful to the residents living here, that shouldn't be allowed, and there should be protections in place so their peace and sanity is preserved.
There are also unanswered questions about how to enforce the rules and some exceptions. For example, tourists staying overnight in the village are exempt from the curfew, but there's no question that tired residents will have to continue enduring throngs of tourists, if only during the daylight hours. Andy Shrea and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Before we go, take a look at these Hungarian stand-up paddlers celebrating Halloween on the Danube. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, follow TaiwanPlus News on social media.